All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Arun Gupta, and this is Virtual DevRel. This Virtual DevRel is a meetup where developer, community managers, developer evangelists, technology evangelists, anybody who is trying to promote your technology to developers, architects, community managers, who are building online community or growing online community. We meet here and we talk about content and concerns that are relevant to us. So that's what Virtual DevRel has been. It has been partially inspired by Virtual Jug, which is a virtual Java user group community, and partially inspired by DevRelCon, which I did earlier this year with Matthew Ravel and Tamao Nakahara. All right, so today's topic is very special because as we are doing developer evangelism, people always ask us question, are you really promoting your technology or are you really selling something here? So there is a bit of a selling involved in our evangelism as well. Or is it not? Well, let's find out from Austin Gunter, who reached out to me. He seems to be pretty passionate about the topic, and I would love to hear his thoughts on it. So as a usual format, Austin is here. He will do the talk, and then later on we will have some discussion around it. Austin, take it away.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be here. So, hey guys, my name is Austin Gunter. I'll go ahead and kick my slides in because I've got intro slides from that'll explain a little bit about who I am and what I'm doing. But the title of my talk is "Developers Are Easy to Sell To," which is on the face, it's not really true. But it's designed to, it's an opinionated sort of controversial talk that that gets your attention. So what we're gonna, before we get started, I know that a lot of people are gonna watch this later, but for those of you that are watching this right now, I wanna get a poll and see where people are coming from in terms of how did you get to dev relations? Did you come from engineering? Did you come from sales and marketing? Did you come somewhere else? Right. So if you see that, if you're watching, go ahead and text in, and we'll get answers coming from this. Nice. So we've got a couple there. I know that a lot of people are going to be recording this or going to be watching this later, so I'll give it a second or two more, but somewhere else. Awesome. So we've part of where this talk came from is people come from dev relations from a couple of different areas, whether that's engineering, sales, and marketing, and somewhere else. But I've always heard people say, well, I sort of just ended up here, and then there's this discipline emerging around sales, around DevRel that involves sales, it involves development, it involves marketing, and it's all about sort of connecting the dots and developing a process to that. And I personally come from a bit of a marketing background, but I've always worked very closely with developers, and so this is, developer community has always been something that I've done. So the question is, is developer relations actually sales, or is it something else entirely? And developers want to ask this question because part of what their job is to make sure that they're getting a really good solution to a problem they have, and they don't want to be sold, they don't want to feel manipulated. And there's usually a perception of a sales guy who looks a lot like this person with a popped collar, and not really sure necessarily if what they're offering, what they're trying to sell is, if they're just trying to make a sale, or if they want to offer value and provide a solution that makes sense for the problem at hand. So I come at this, I come at this from the perspective of, you can have an element of sales or be doing some form of sales in your job as a developer evangelist, and still sleep at night, right? So and the other thing is, sales have to be a part of what we're doing, because it would be great if all day long we could just be working on open source projects and speaking at conferences and hanging out with other developers But all of those efforts are, from each one of these well-known open source projects, and the hundreds and thousands of other ones that make up the internet and make up the things that we're working on every day. All of those efforts that are open source, that are free, the ways that we can go around and do community-focused events and support developer efforts, that's always supported by revenue coming into a for-profit company. Like Linux is supported by Red Hat, which at this point is actually $1 billion company, and they have, they have to have revenue coming in the door, right? So there is an element of money has to exchange hands whenever we're doing our work, and that's part of where we fit in. It's making that stuff easier. So it makes sense for us to have a conversation about what does sales look like for a developer evangelist? How can we think about this? And like I said, still sleep at night. So today we're gonna define sales in the context of developer relations. Where does that begin and end? It starts with setting our developers up for success and making sure that all of our efforts to get their attention, to develop or to develop their awareness of the software that we're representing, are all part of bringing success and adding value to their day-to-day lives. We're going to talk about building holistic and ecological sales relationships between users, between our companies, and with our software. And then we're going to understand how developer evangelists can close a sale, quote unquote, right, successfully, in a way that's win-win for everybody involved. So who am I? Right now I'm doing developer community for a company called datawire.io, which I'll explain in a second. Previously I was doing developer community at a managed WordPress host called WP Engine. I wrote a book about my journey into startups from a liberal arts background called The Liberal Arts Techie. I'm on Twitter at Austin Gunter. So this is, I come from a non-traditional tech background. Started out as a writer and made my way into tech marketing, and I found myself very much at home working with DevOps customers, or DevOps folks, and really, really hardcore developers at Datawire. Datawire's whole thesis is that microservices should be easy to build. We have an open source microservices SDK, and you can get started with microservices in minutes, or at least that's the idea of what we're doing. And this is relevant. The hook here, I'll actually dig into why we frame things that way in a little bit as related to the sales process, right? So let's start off by redefining sales. Sales is not just a financial transaction where the salesperson disappears after the money is exchanged, right? This isn't you don't want to be gone the next morning after somebody's handed their credit card to you and decided to give you some money. Sales is also not manipulation or coercion. If what somebody is doing is manipulating somebody into spending money, that's not a good way to build a software company in particular. Sales is it's service. Anytime we're working with a customer or a potential customer and there is money on the line, we have to assume that we're going to be one of the first people that they call if there's a problem or they have a question. So really the sale is the beginning of what should be a long-term relationship that's built around really effective, happy use of the software that we're representing. And sales always starts with massive empathy for the people that we're working with and the people that we're going to be selling to. We need to understand who they are. We need to understand what their problems are, and we need to understand how we are going to fit into solving those problems and adding value day in and day out, and so that they trust us over time. So how can we set the people that we're working with up for success from the get-go? This is a photo of a guy named Tom Watson, who is the CTO of a startup called Hubble. That it's a little bit like Uber for office space. Tom and I were on a call about a couple of weeks ago, And he's in the process of looking into migrating from Heroku to AWS, which is something that people in the microservices space, that's a common question, right? And he started asking me questions about that. Now, at the end, like really, I don't have a clue about how somebody would make that migration or what that looks like. I know enough about how it makes sense, but he's really trying to get into the weeds and dig into the details of that. Now, it happened that because I'm having a lot of conversations like this with a lot of folks, I knew somebody who had done that. And I was able to make a connection, make an intro, so Tom can actually chat with somebody who's done this in real life and knows the process of making that migration over. So one of the first ways that that I look to build relationships with developers and set them up for success is by thinking about who all is in my network and who I can make an intro to. And this is one of the biggest ways that as developer evangelists, part of our job is to build this massive network, what marketers would call the top of the funnel, your network of people that might potentially use your software at the end of the day, might not. But those are people that know you and that you can build strong relationships with. And one of the fastest ways to do that is by making introductions that are fortuitous for everybody involved. I help you, you help me. We both move the ball down the field, and next time one of us has a question, we have somebody else in our network that we can reach out to. The content thing, which has been talked about a lot, content that's useful, that tells people how to do things, that answers questions. Like the Heroku to AWS thing, that'd be a great example of a piece of content that that we could put out, right? But it all starts with, what are the problems that that these developers are having, and what resources can I offer? Do I have? What can I help with? And it doesn't have to be something that any of us personally know how to do or have done in the past. Literally, by knowing who's in our network or knowing where we can find the answer and being the conduit for that, that's the first step in starting to build a relationship that's based primarily around developer success. So the next thing is building a holistic sales relationship, right? Which starts off with adding value early and often, right? Starting off with the intro. Making sure that what we're doing from the get-go is impactful into somebody's business and adds value to what they're doing. And I always like to make sure that I'm offering more than I receive, because that makes it easier for people to open my emails. When somebody knows that one of my biggest priorities is connecting people with value, or offering something back to something to what they care about, then they open my email and they'll answer questions that I might have around my software, or they will do things. They'll be a beta tester, or they'll demo software, or give me feedback on a new feature, because they know that most of the time what I'm doing is trying to add value, trying to make an intro, trying to make their life better. There's a guy that I'm working with right now who's writing a book around Go, and he reached out to me to edit a couple of chapters of that. And so that's something that, because I have that in my background, I'm very happy to be able to do that, because then I know that in the future I can come and ask him for something, and we have a relationship based on mutual service and adding value, right? And the next thing about building a great sales relationship is by building credibility and trust, by saying, no, we aren't necessarily a good fit. One of the biggest ways that in a sales type conversation, or when money is on the line, one of the biggest ways we can offer, or we can build credibility, is by saying, by asking qualifying questions to understand what problem somebody's trying to solve, and then being quick to say, you know what, I know that, a lot of people are looking at our software or our product for solutions like that, but we're not a good fit for the following reasons, and then suggesting another company that you do know will be a good fit, even if they're a competitor. And by doing this, somebody knows that you're not just out to make a buck, you're not just out to get the sale. One of my favorite examples of this is Amazon.com. I think that they still do this, but I know for a long time what they were doing was posting the sale, the like posting products and the price of the same product on a competing website. So Amazon would list, let's say, you're buying a book on Amazon. Well, they would list the price of that book on another website, even if it was cheaper on that other website than it was on Amazon.com. Which doesn't necessarily make sense on face because, right, Amazon wants to get as many sales as possible. But part of what their goal was to become the destination for people buying anything on the internet. So if they post the price and it's cheaper to a third-party website, as a customer, as a user, I know that Amazon is always going to be the first place I want to go to look when I want to buy something. I develop trust in them as a resource. And I come back again and again, which means that, in the future, I might actually buy something, or I'm more likely to buy something from them. As developer relations, this is a massive way that we can build this credibility and build a holistic relationship by saying, look, I'm not a good fit, or who you need to talk to about this is not me, it's somebody else. But we become that hub of information that people want to come to first, which automatically means we have more conversations and we have more opportunities to help people out and to make more connections over the long term. And then, of course, we get to the place of like actually, getting down the line of how are we closing a sale? How are we getting somebody to actually try our software out, to use it, to play around with it, and come back and saying, yes, I do actually think I might want to spend some money with you. The first place that I always like to start is having a conversation with an opinionated perspective. When I was at WP Engine, we were doing a lot of WordPress stuff with massive, WordPress installs, and the industry as a whole, and I think most people still have this belief because there's some truth to it, is that WordPress is very, very hard to scale, and it's not very fast because of the nature of the code base. And this is part of what that whole industry around managed hosting, like WP Engine, Pantheon, and now everybody has one of those products. But our thesis was WordPress can be fast. WordPress can be very, very scalable. And we would start conversations by saying that WordPress can be fast without you having to customize servers, etc. And that automatically raises the inherent skepticism in a developer. At DataWire, it's microservices should be easy. You don't have to spend 2 years like Amazon or Netflix, etc., did refactoring your entire application in order to achieve the benefits of microservices. You can get started in a couple of weeks. Then you want to have empathy when you pitch what you're doing, understanding not just the software problems that a developer is having, but also any sort of battle internally they might have to, politically, to suggest a new, maybe potentially unproven piece of technology. Understanding that they're going to have to go back to the rest of their team or to some, to another developer who might hold the keys to deploying something new into the sandbox environment or into production, who is very resistant to change. Having empathy for those sorts of problems and knowing how to offer solutions or offer suggestions about how they can pitch this sort of software in. And then the next step is knowing that developers are going to do their homework. So I'm going to walk you through now a pitch that I've used a number of times, or the general framework that I work to when I'm actually going to pitch software, right? So the first thing is you say something opinionated about the tech, like microservices are easy, or WordPress is easy to make scalable. Say something that is going to engage the developer's natural skepticism, their natural desire to prove you wrong, or to poke a hole, or to find something that doesn't quite work. Developers do this because they have to think that way whenever they're coding anyways. They can't accept things at face value. They have to think through the edge cases, because once something goes into production, you don't want the server to catch fire because of that new code you pushed out. You want to make sure things are bulletproof. So engage that natural skepticism by saying something opinionated, saying something controversial, because then they want to start asking questions. Now they're like, look, I don't believe you. What about this? Or in my experience, that, right? That's a fantastic place to be, because it means that they're interested. And then you start answering those questions, but then the next step is literally just to tell them where they can get a hold of the software, letting them know where they can do a free demo of that, and then you walk away. And if you've done a good job of engaging that skepticism or that doubt, they're going to go off to play around and see for themselves. Like, developers have to prove this, prove that something's going to work to their own satisfaction. And the only way that they're going to do that is by sitting behind the terminal, and spinning up your product. So you walk away and let them go try and break the software. And the best part about the pitch is there's no coercion, there's no manipulation. Everything is predicated on the software being solid and it working. If what you're pitching or what you're offering isn't actually quality, then you'll be found out very, very quickly. But assuming the software is solid, the developer is going to come back and say, look, you know what, that worked. I have a couple of questions about this use case or that use case, but that opinionated, slightly controversial thing that you said, you were right. And that you then develop credibility and trust, and they're very then they're more willing to say, you know what, let's have a conversation about actually becoming a customer of yours. This works because it comes from a place of deep empathy with their personality, their tendencies, the way that their work affects their thinking and affects the way that they go about solving problems. It has massive respect for their intellect and their independence, their ability to reason through problems. You're assuming that that's going to be a huge part of how they buy software, how they use software, and so you're assuming you're incorporating that into the sales pitch. And then again, the entire sales pitch rests on the quality of the software, the quality of the software's ability to actually solve a problem, which when we go back to talking about sales as a service, sales as a long-term relationship, that's entirely based on the ability of your product to do what it says it's going to do, to make somebody's life easier, to save them time, to help them move faster in their environment, or worry about security less, or get more things done in a team environment. And if you're offering something of that much value, then it's very easy to, with integrity, say, hey, take a look at this. Yes, it might be expensive, or yes, it does cost money. Part of this is not all open source. But there's value here, and I want to and I believe in offering that value to you. So this is part of I'm wrapping up. This is how we're switching our perception of sales, and how we as developer relationships, developer community leaders, switch sort of the way that we think about sales from this sort of I don't know if I want to be this guy, into a really holistic, yes, I'm a developer evangelist. I focus on developer community, and I believe in the software. I believe in the software that I'm building. So that's what I've got. Thank you guys so much. Here's where the slides are going to be. I have to upload them as soon as I'm done here. If you guys want to send me an email, it's austin@datawire.io. You can check out on Amazon my book if that's interesting to you, and follow up with me on Twitter @AustinGunter. So thank you guys so much.
Austin, this is fantastic. Actually, I really enjoyed. Fantastic presentation, really. Now, let me ask you very first question.
Yep.
Is DevRel sales, with a facade on top of it?
I don't think so. I think about so nobody's carrying a quota, right? Sales is a discipline of itself. DevRel is a personality. It's you're a very technical person, but you also have the charisma, or you like being around people, you like speaking in public. Salespeople, they're very good at following a process. They're aggressive. I think that and there's overlap there, but I think that different people come into both roles, and I think that there's a Venn diagram overlap, but there's enough separation there that I don't think it's the same thing. I think that the nature of sales in software has changed a lot because sales, there's so much less information that you have to get one-to-one with a salesperson anymore. I can go out on the internet, and so much of what you call the sales or the marketing funnel is available in content or available on social media. And that's part of what our job is to take as much of that funnel and widen it by saying at the top, like, here's content that you can get to. Here's a talk that I did. I view, like if you want to put it into like a sales or a marketing funnel, you can say that every interaction that you have as a developer evangelist can map to a marketing and sales funnel. I think that it's effective to do that, particularly if you want to justify your activities, right, from a budgetary standpoint. Like,
Yeah.
I have what for what we're doing at DataWire, I have what's called the microservices customer journey, which is, it starts off like, we've heard about microservices, and then we're evaluating if microservices is right for us. And then, we're looking at other people to understand like how they've done this, and it goes on and on and on. So, and that's how I think about my marketing funnel, is I look at it as the adoption of this particular technology funnel. And then I map conversations that I would be having to each part of that. And that's sort of how I do reporting, and I report up. And so I would encourage people to look at it from that perspective, because you can map the progress of questions people are asking to that. But at the end of the day, like, you're not carrying a quota. You're not trying at the end of the day to like make a sale. Your objective is a little bit further back from that. It's awareness, it's goodwill, it's creating brand ambassadors. It's like getting people like, yes, I really like engaging with you, and I know that that when I do that, I'm gonna get answers to my questions, and I respect you, and I'm referring other people to you.
Right. No, I think you said it rightly, that the moment we get rid of a quota and a process, it's a lot more organic, and that the fact that our focus is not on generating money but on generating content, that itself tells people that, I'm going to be more authentic because I'm not selling you something. In a short way, everybody in the world is selling something. You are selling a technology or a solution,
Sure.
which is not necessarily tied to a dollar.
Right. Yeah.
It's fantastic. How do you define the boundary between sales and development? Well, we already covered that. I made a note of that. One of the comments you made about was holistic sales relationship. And you talked about the point which is called as offer more than you receive, build credibility and trust by saying we are not a good fit. I think that's a very valuable feedback. In general, that's not just true for being a DevRel, but that's really important for being a good person itself.
Yes. Yeah, and I think, again, that's why I said sales comes from a service perspective, right? Anytime I'm having a conversation where there's money on the line, I view that as a commitment on my part, right? To follow through on the value that's being exchanged there. And money is just sort of one way of articulating value that's exchanged. And so and that, like, it's not easy to build a software company. It's not easy to build a product, and that's value that's exchanged and articulated, and you're doing that so that somebody can have a relationship with the problem that you're solving. And I think that part of our responsibility is to like say from the get-go, like, look, this is the problem that we do solve, and this is the problem that we don't solve, and then that unlocks a lot of credibility and trust, because somebody knows that they can ask me a question, and if I'm not the right person for it, I'm going to tell you, no, I'm not the right person for it. And that means that whatever question you're asking me, that I'm going to give you the best answer that I know how to. Which again, like, and I think, and really good salespeople will do this too, because like really good salespeople know that if they are just trying to get something across the line and get, the purchase order signed, that they'll burn the relationship and somebody's not going to come back and buy a second time, or the customer will churn, right? And if I'm a smart sales guy, I know that I want somebody to be a customer for 2 years, so they keep buying, adding more features and buying more. I lost you for a second. Are you still there? Did I? Okay, we're good. Okay, so I know that I want to build a long-term relationship, that because I mean that's going to make me more money, and if I'm carrying a quota, that's key. If I'm a DevRel person, I want somebody coming to me for questions. I want them knowing that if they've got a problem, that I'm the first place that they come to, because I want to be the hub for that information, because I'm going to have resources, and the better they feel about me, the better they feel about the company that I work for. You're muted now. You're muted.
Sorry, yeah. What do you think about companies like Atlassian, where they have no sales team at all, and everything is done through like DevRel, people like Sven Peters and all who go around the world and who talk about solving real world problems, and then everything spreads like crazy with the word of mouth. Do you see more and more companies going in that route where they'll say, you know what, we don't want, we are catering to developers, we don't want traditional salespeople, we only want DevRel?
So I think that is a model that works for Atlassian, because Atlassian primarily sells to developers. And I think that, like, I don't know that would work for Salesforce.com, for example, right?
Yeah.
But I think so I think you have to look at the context that you're selling in. But I wrote a blog post a couple of years ago called "Social is over 50% of your sales funnel."
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually more than that now. It's more like 60-70%. And what I mean by social is that you don't need sales to answer that first part of the funnel. Like I said earlier, you can do that in content marketing. You can do that in word of mouth. You can do that in social media. You can do that in relationships. Particularly in developer communities, because developers inherently go off on their own to find answers, and they're very, very good in a way that other customers might not be, just because the nature of the brain nature of the work that a developer does. They're incredibly good at finding their own answers. And so part of what all Atlassian has to do is make sure that they've mapped out what those answers probably are. They have a funnel just like Salesforce.com does, but they're making sure that answers to those questions are on the internet, on talks, at conferences. They're SEO optimized so that they're there, so that they're easy to find. And then they make sure that when customers do sign up, they're massively successful, so that when you're asking opinion, hey, I'm looking at signing up with Jira or HipChat, like somebody goes, hell yes, that's exactly what you should do, right? And that covers your sales cycle.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at Couchbase, it's a NoSQL database. So we have a traditional sales cycle, because you have to go through, understand the need, how many nodes you want, stuff like that, sizing, capacity, Amazon, on-prem, all that, all sorts of configurations possible. Sales cycles have evolved, because now, one of the things I think you mentioned was, that developers are going to do their homework.
Yeah.
And that is true. We walked into a site, AT&T is one of our customers. So we walked into the site, a few weeks ago. The guy said, Arun, just give a talk about containers. I said, okay, I'll give a talk about containers. I walk into the account, the customer sitting right next to me, he shook my hand. Arun, that GitHub repo where you worked on something is fantastic. We're using it in production. Here are 2 issues that need to be fixed, and we're going to send you a pull request. Mm-hmm. So the topic completely flipped. You're not talking about containers. You're actually talking about a script that I wrote. What needs to be fixed, what needs to be improved. So sales cycle all of a sudden becomes so much easier.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason you need somebody, like, if you're selling a technical product, you need to have a very technical person who knows how to actually have all those conversations.
Yeah.
If you had a sales guy walk into the room right there, he didn't build this stuff. He's not as familiar with the code base. Like,
right.
He's not gonna. He's literally, like, his answer to that question is, you know what? I've got a guy that can answer that. Let me set up another meeting.
Right.
You've just wasted all this time.
Yeah. No, excellent, fantastic. No, I love your developer sales pitch. I think that kind of clearly explains. You need to tease the developer enough, challenge their authority, and then as a developer, that inner spark lights up.
Yep.
You said that, okay, I'm going to verify it. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to Google it. I'm going to beat the shit out of it.
Exactly.
And then you talk. So I agree. I think I like that.
Once you've done that, you've won. Assuming the product works, assuming that you are actually working for a good company, once you've got them calling bullshit, you have, like, that's all you need to do, because they're going to go off and go, you know what?
That's it. That's it. Fantastic, fantastic. So, last one. Where can people find more about what DataWire does, and why is it relevant in the microservices space?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thanks for letting me give a pitch here. Look, everybody's talking about microservices right now because it increases engineering velocity, because if you have decoupled services, you can update features without having to worry about this massive monolithic application where you might break something when you change a library here, etc. So everybody's really interested in this, because if you can get your development team moving faster, then you can push customer features out faster. You can get your revenue faster, etc. However, you have to start asking a bunch of really challenging questions around like a distributed system at that point. So, traditionally, a lot of the companies that have adopted microservices have been like these big unicorn type companies, right? Amazon or Netflix or Yelp, and all of these companies have said, well, we're going to set aside this team of like 5 or 10 developers to start building all these toolkits for developers around microservices. And not a lot of companies have the luxury of being able to just hire a team of 10 extra developers to do that, but a company like Amazon does. So what DataWire does is we've said, look, you really don't need all like this crazy number of features to adopt microservices. You really just need a handful of things really to get to like your first 100 or so, even more than that. Like you don't need to have gRPC set up, right? You can still have HTTP. So really what you need is service discovery. You need a little bit of circuit breaking technology, some distributed logging and tracing. And what DataWire does is we have a system that allows you to literally get set up and build your first microservice in a few minutes. It's called the DataWire Microservices Development Kit. So it's an SDK for microservices, the DataWire MDK, and it's open source. It's on GitHub, and you can play around with it. And then we have our mission control product, which is how you visualize your constellation of services that are up and running, the distributed tracing and logging, so you can see where errors happen. If because you're moving faster, you push a bug into the system, we'll circuit break that and say, look, okay, that system's got that service version has a bug in it. We go back to the previously functioning version of the service. So if you have a bug in like one service somewhere, it doesn't bring down your entire system. So that's what we're doing. We're making it easy for you to just to adopt microservices. You're still muted.
Yeah, I was walking around, so I thought I'll mute myself. Yeah, no, I think and I agree, there is definitely a need for such an offering, because not everybody in the world is Netflix and Amazon and Yelp, where they can throw 10 people, go build these tools that we need. Figure out what our service discovery strategy is going to be. So I think there's a definite need for this. Excellent. So I guess people can find out more details at datawire.io.
Datawire.io. The details are datawire.io/features. You can actually register for a demo or download the MDK yourself there and play around with it. But if you have more questions about that, or if you're considering adopting microservices or already starting doing that, we would definitely love to talk to you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Austin. Take care.
Thank you, Aaron.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.